Lightning like Steve McQueen. I'm in the fast lane when the light turns green. And I built tough, I ain't nothing but grit. Cause I made rugged blood, sweat, and spit. Yeah, like a horse I fly. Better push yourself in for a bumpy ride. I like to play hard, but I work harder. And I weather the storm cause I'm built stronger.
Hey guys, before we jump into the episode, I wanted to let you know it is brought to you by Denim. As a business owner myself, I personally know the importance of financial stability and preserving cash flow to help navigate through any freight market. With Denim's comprehensive service offering, you now have an all-in-one financial partner whose platform includes factoring, payments, freight audit, document collection management, and analytics, which help keep your business financially healthy and increase your team's time to focus on revenue-producing activities. You can also take advantage of Denim's free credit check, which they perform on all of your customers. And Denim will proactively reach out to you if they spot any signs of credit deterioration. Finally, Denim always pays your carriers first. As a broker, this is imperative to preserving your credit score in the market, which ultimately helps you become a broker of choice to your carrier partners. Are you ready to learn more? Visit denim.com to schedule a demo today. Just do me a favor and let them know that the Freight Coach sent you. This episode is brought to you by SPI Logistics, the premier freight agent logistics firm in North America. For over 40 years, SPI has been diligently building the most successful freight agent network to provide first-class relationships for our shippers, receivers, and carrier partners. We are more than another transportation network. We are a dedicated team of professionals united by one singular purpose, and that is to expedite our agents' success. All of our agents are set up for success on day one, as they are provided with a full suite of support staff that is ready to assist them with everything from after-hours emergencies to financial and administrative needs on a no-fee basis. This way, you can focus on continuing to grow your business. There is no financial risk to start, and you have the ability to earn up to 75% in commissions. If you are looking to take control of your financial future and build your business with the backing of one of the most successful logistics firms in North America, visit www.spi3pl.com to learn more. Do me a favor and let them know that the Freight Coach sent you. What is up, ladies and gentlemen? We are back. We are live. It is the Freight Coach podcast, the top podcast in transportation, coming to you guys every single weekday, 8:30 a.m. Pacific, 10:30 Central, to break down some industry headlines, but most importantly, provide some actual insight into what you can do with all of this information. This is your first time tuning in. Welcome. This is the real side of freight, ladies and gentlemen. And I say that before every single show. And what I mean by that is I only speak with transportation professionals, because at the end of the day, I want to talk to the right individuals who have done what you're looking to do or who are currently doing what you're trying to achieve, so you can take that information, apply it, utilize it, and see a meaningful difference in your business and your life. Nick, my man, let's go over on YouTube. Carla Isted, good morning. She's watching over on LinkedIn here, ladies and gentlemen. We go live on YouTube, LinkedIn, I think Facebook too, because I don't pay for Twitter, and I'm trying to stay off as many social media sites as possible right now because I want to focus on building my company and not deal with all the noise that's out there. But speaking of a guy who makes a lot of noise about a very specific topic, and I think he might be announcing his candidacy today as a one issue candidate here. But with that being said, we have our favorite attorney, Mr. Matt Leffler, back on the show. What is going on, my man?
Thank you for having me back on to tilt at my absolute favorite windmill, non-competition agreements. As always, it's a pleasure, Freight Coach. Thank you for having me back on the program.
Dude, absolutely. Cody Kaler, let's go. Happy Monday to you, sir. Yeah, man, there's a lot to talk about. It seems like it's every other day there's a new thing coming out in the news regarding non-competes. Are they here? Are they done? What does Chevron have to do with this? Is price controls going to work in the federal government? And so there's just so much that we can break down. And ironically, they're all kind of tied together here to this industry. So what's new out there, my man?
I mean, it has been essentially 6 days since we had a major ruling in this country around the FTC's ban on non-competition agreements. For the folks who haven't been paying attention, you can be forgiven. This is a very complicated issue, but the FTC back in earlier this year, they announced the rule back in 23, but they put the rule into place back a couple months ago. This is a ban on all 30 million non-competition agreements that affect American workers. 1 in 5 working Americans have a non-compete. And the FTC put out a rule banning non-competition agreements. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce filed when they made the initial proposal. They're like, you can do that, but we're going to sue you. And they absolutely did sue. And what we have on August 20th is a ruling out of a district court in Texas that has effectively knocked down the rule banning non-competition agreements. There's a lot to unpack, but as of right now, the FTC's rule is absolutely in jeopardy. Very likely it will not make it to the light of day.
What are your thoughts on that, Matt?
I love the ability for an employer to tell a worker, hey, we have an at-will relationship. If you and I, or if I decide that you should go somewhere else, I can fire you for any reason as long as it's not an illegal reason. So if you file workers' compensation, I fire you, that's against the law. But I can fire you because it's Monday, because it's Tuesday, it's fine. But after you leave me, I want to know what you're up to. I want to know who you're talking to, what job you're performing, who you're performing it for. And I want to know that maybe for the next 6 months, maybe for the next 12 months, and maybe for the next 18 months, maybe even 2 years. And if I think you're violating the document that I made you sign, I can ruin your day. I could ruin your week. I could ruin your life by tying you up in litigation and bankrupting you. That's really what the issue is about this FTC rule trying to ban non-competes. These are, again, 18% of working Americans, about 1 in 5, have one of these things. So I am generally averse to non-competes unless you pay separate consideration or it's for a senior level person. But that's not the world we live in the United States. The United States, about 40% of people that have a non-compete are making under $20 an hour. We should all be a little bit skeptical of when businesses want to know what you're doing after they leave your employ.
You know, Matt, you've done you've done more research on this topic for the transportation industry than literally anybody I know outside of not like the attorneys for some of these large companies that literally enforce this for everybody inside of their organization. Why is it so prevalent inside of transportation in particular? Because it seems like, like you said, 1 in 5, was it 1 in 5 Americans?
5 working Americans. That's right.
Yeah, 1 in 5 working. I would love to see. Have you ever found the stats on inside of transportation?
I mean, it's very similar to the national average. Where you see this stuff the most pervasive, and this might shock some people who are listening to us right now, it's in the medical industry. Nurses, anesthesiologists, doctors, you would not suspect that every single person working in that hospital has a non-compete, but almost every single one of them does. So Our industry is not an aberration. We're really just like everybody else. And functionally, it goes back to how do you attract and retain great talent? And how do you build a moat so that your competitors can't steal your business? So one of the ways you do that is to offer great benefits, to offer great compensation, to be a great place to work. But the other way you can do that is to tell somebody, if you decide to leave me and you try to compete with me, I'll sue you. And so fear, coercion is another way you can drive this ability to retain talent, or at the minimum, get them out of the industry entirely so they're not competing with you in 6 days or 5 days or 2 months.
What would you support from a, maybe it's a non-solicit agreement, or how does a company protect its IP and minimizes that, right? Because again, I fully agree with you on the majority of these things. If you're an entry-level sales rep out there, you shouldn't be adhered to, but proprietary information, senior leadership, I understand the need for that. But how do you minimize that, right? Because as a business owner, say there's no non-compete out there, but somebody has direct access. And I think that this is most people's complaints. It's not that I'm in fear of losing an account, but it's the fact that this individual might have access to all of this data, right? They have lane data, they have rates paid. They can go in there and competitively sell to get in the door based on some of these things. So how does an organization protect itself without, cutting off somebody's knees essentially on employment if it doesn't work out with that organization?
It's a great question. And I deal with this question like literally every day. And so let me kind of break down like what we're really focusing on. So non-competes, non-solicits, non-disparagements, non-disclosures, and increasingly training repayment agreement plans. They also call them traps. These are a flavor of a post-employment restrictive covenant. Post-employment, it's after you've left the job. Covenant, it's an agreement, it's a contract. And then it is this idea that when you leave, what can I control you to do? So how do you protect your information? How do you protect proprietary information? A non-disclosure and trade secret agreement. Those exist. It's essentially an agreement that says you will have access to information that you wouldn't otherwise have. You cannot use this information when you leave us. Now, I will also challenge most business owners as to what is actually confidential and proprietary, because look, ZoomInfo knows more about your customer than you do. Google probably knows more about your customer, your contacts than you do. LinkedIn certainly knows more about your customers and your contacts than you do. But again, what is confidential proprietary? You define the terms. Everyone understands what you're dealing with. And if someone breaks it, you sue them, you get an injunction, and they stop disseminating it. But that is how you protect real intellectual property, the secret sauce, the recipe, the Coke Zero recipe. Like that's how you protect those. The non-solicitation agreement, what that does is it has a time duration and specific personas that you can't reach out to. Usually your customers or prospective customers, generally your employees, as well as maybe the contractors that were at that company. And that's how you can protect, to an extent, the relationships that you had when that person was working for you. The thing to keep in mind, and what a lot of employers don't like, is the non-solicit binds you. It doesn't bind your customer. It doesn't bind your former employees. If they want to come work with you, if they want to solicit you, they absolutely positively can. Now, if I, as an lawyer, go, oh, I think you solicited, I'm going to sue you anyway. I'm going to subpoena your social media. I'm going to subpoena your cell phone records. I'm going to verify that the customer reached out to you. So at the end of the day, it still has a similar kind of function of let's make your life difficult. The non-compete, Chris, what that all boils down to is what job do you do right now? And how long will I ban you from doing that job? Will it be a year? Will it be 2 years? Whatever. But it's all about stopping you from practicing at all in your craft. And we define what that craft is. And it ultimately means that you have to leave the industry or risk being sued.
Yeah. With as large as the potential market share is inside of transportation. So let's primarily focus on freight brokerage here only, because like the market share overall, I think it's like $200 billion that's available for hire transportation. Sean Smith with Denim, he always comes on for his Financial Fridays, because we want to teach people about market sizes. We want to teach people about financial literacy, financial responsibility inside of business and how to grow and scale and stuff like that. So it's like when you look at a $200 billion market share, and we're just going to stick with this number for easy conversation piece here, right? Because I'm sure some fucker out there could probably,
yeah, absolutely.
But if we're looking out there, I mean, $200 billion, right? And then if you look at C.H. Robinson has been number one for a very long time. They're at like $12 billion. But I don't know if that number accounts just for their freight brokerage revenue or if that's all of their business units, right? Because they have multiple service offerings that comes along with it. So it's like if you look at that, I mean, man, there's not 1, 2, hell, even 10 players in the brokerage space that account for more than 15% of the overall market, right? So it's like if we're looking at it from an overall market standpoint, why is this so strict, do you think? Because like, dude, $200 billion, that's a lot of freight that we're talking about.
This is a really good question. It really goes back to the motivations of the senior leadership team. Like they've taken advice from counsel to put these things in place. Yeah. What they think is happening generally is, one, you're going to increase retention. You will increase the retention of your workers because they're not going to be legally allowed to go work for a competitor or start their own business. Number two, there's a piece of, we're all the team. Like when I'm throwing a new water bottle at you or a new hat at you, making you feel like you're part of my organization, it's when I can slip in something that says, look, I'm hedging my bets. I'm going to invest a ton of resources into your success with this company. If you aren't successful within us, I need to make sure that I have some protection on the investment that I threw at you. So this is a pathway of driving retention, hedging your bets. And then in the way I look at this is really just a technique in bullying, right? So if the only reason you retain a business is one key employee who's just really good, you probably should get out of the business. Like if you're so scared that one person leaving your organization jeopardizes the fundamentals of the business, I question that. So what's happened over the last, let's say 2 decades has been this pervasive nature of people buying organizations, whether it's through private equity, other types of deals, and inserting these things if they're not there, or conversely, they've had them all along and they've been carefully building out how they enforce these things. They're not typically enforced, Chris, through a litigation. They're usually enforced through a letter sent to your new employer and to you that basically tells the new employer, fire this person. And most employers fire the person. They listen. They don't want to get litigated. They don't want to sue anybody.
Again, this is honestly my opinion on why they are as prevalent as they are out there, because I think most sales organizations, whether it's in freight brokerage or other ones where, you're a broker, right? You don't technically own anything, right? Like we have our computers, we have our stuff, but like ultimately when it boils down to it, most businesses are funded by 1 or 2 key accounts. That kind of covers, the Pareto principle. You guys can go out there and Google it, 80%, the 80-20 rule. I think in most startup businesses and most freight brokerages, I would argue that it's probably more 90-10 because, ultimately, the reality is everybody has that one key account that kind of takes up the most of your time and resources, right? And, the reality is you're out there and you're building your book of business and your business or whatever that looks like. And then you finally get that one high volume account where you start to see some results on. Then you can build up a team around it. And most people stick in that. And then they don't go and continue to develop new business because, why go out into the big, bad, scary sales world when you have somebody who's kind of feeding you, right? It's that comfort thing is what it boils down to. Now, this isn't everywhere, but this is just my honest opinion on why it is this way is because they want to protect that 1 or 2 account, that kind of funds everything. And I get it, right? Like you want to protect your business and stuff like that. But I think you almost need to look at it as why did we stop developing business? Why did we stop going after new accounts and developing other accounts? Because generally speaking, your priorities shift, right? Because it's like, again, you get that one account, you're out there, you're servicing that one, they're getting all your attention, and that other accounts fall to the wayside, So it's like, I think it's a lot of, and again, this is all pie in the sky, perfect world scenarios, but you really got to focus on every individual account and see, are you actually truly maximizing that? Because every business falls into this at some point, but the really smart businesses, the ones that I feel like make it the longest out there, are on a mission to diversify everything. So one account accounts for more than a certain percentage out there. Like I'm going to make a very, very bold statement here, but one goal of mine is I want to have it be like 10%. I want to get it down to no account accounts for more than 10% of our overall revenue. And now that's a very long-term thing because as we're building and scaling, we're definitely falling into and are currently operating inside of that Pareto principle, right? The 80-20 thing. But long-term, I want to keep, like as a leader, I want to keep chipping away at that to get that down to where our exposure isn't all tied to one thing. Because ultimately as a broker, no matter what, you're only as good as your last shipment. I hate to break it to everybody. You're only as good as your last shipment. It doesn't matter how long of a relationship you have. You can lose your business at the snap of a finger. Nobody owes you anything. And I think a lot of people need to get back to that sense of urgency behind it, right? Because I would argue that there's probably a lot of people out there who are losing business and they're like, I don't know what to do. What happened? And then they're focusing on their comfort as opposed to getting uncomfortable. Because, dude, I cold call every single day. It's very uncomfortable to go out there and try and develop business, right? It's so many no's. You're instantly, whatever, but that's all part of it. But again, I think to kind of summarize a lot of that, I think that's why they're so strict, man. There's so many people out there that are pushing it. It's because they're trying to protect their one egg as opposed to going out there and farming a fucking dozen of them.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I think ultimately it's a decision by management that is short-sighted. It is an idea of we put these things in place, we will prevent the churn of our customers by making sure our key leaders or our key personnel can't go do this somewhere else. The challenge I have for any leader who has these non-competes in today is how much of your time are you spending looking in the rearview mirror? How often do you have to take your eyes off of what you're focusing on, just delivering value for your customer every single day? If your focus and your preoccupation is what's Steve doing today? Who's he working for now? You're just poisoning yourself up to be knocked down because you're not focusing on the value of the customer.
Yeah. No, I agree, man. Let's shift this for the last kind of, because like there's another big ruling out there with Chevron that is kind of tied into a lot of this and how it could actually have some pretty major trickle effects inside of the transportation industry. You know, I'm a massive fan of the Chevron ruling that happened.
Yeah.
I am all going to go as far as saying disband the Fed entirely, get it down to as bare minimum as possible. I am not a big government guy at all. I believe in the structure of it, you know, of course, but like I feel like some of these agencies have gone way too far, way above and beyond. And then especially inside of the Department of Transportation, you know, and the FMCSA, like like when it comes down to speed limiters, for example, right? Like if what's the point of the speed limit, right? Like honestly, what is the point of the speed limit? That's been my argument about this the entire time. And this is what I think with Chevron, what we're going to start seeing is curbing their gross overreach, in my opinion.
Yeah, to kind of tee this up to help people understand. So Loper Bright is the Supreme Court case that reversed Chevron. Chevron was a 40-year-old precedent, just a little bit older than I am. And Chevron stood for the proposition that if you were an administrative agency and there was ambiguity in the law that made you, they call it an enabling statute. If there was some ambiguity, a word didn't have a definition, the agency was allowed to define the term themselves. And if it was appealed to the judiciary, you know, the district courts, the appellate courts, the Supreme Court, those courts had to give deference. They had to be like, yeah, we think that's right. Unless it's like completely bananas. We call it arbitrary and capricious, but realistically, it's if this rule makes no sense, we're not going to let you do it. But removing Chevron now means that agencies must act within their charter. And if it's basically a close call, there's ambiguity, they're going to let the courts decide. And so speed limiters is going to be a very interesting case. I'll kind of throw this out there with the ELD mandate. So ELDs, there was actual congressional legislation that said you FMCSA need to make something about this. So they did have authority in some parts of it, but there was questions about what was considered harassment. And the agency, the FMCSA, was given Chevron deference in making ELDs. Now, as we look at the speed limiters, this is, I think, ELDs 2.0. When you put the ELDs in trucks, truck drivers drove faster. There's data that shows that you're going faster because now you have less time, essentially. You can't fudge the numbers. And so you saw this rise of speeding. Well, the mega fleets had already been using ELDs. The mega fleets already do speed limiters. So now if we see a final rule, it will absolutely be challenged, but it may still be, in fact, a thing that happens. And then you have to take your truck to a dealer or a service provider and have them reprogram the truck to go slower. And that might be $300 per truck in the United States. And that's talking millions of trucks would have to be governed if this rule ultimately finds the light of day.
And that right there to me is an absolute kill to the small business out there, right? And I think like I broke down an article here. It hasn't been recently, but ELDs did not lead to safer roads. It actually, the accidents were on par with what they were pre-ELDs, right? And I think it's kind of has to do with that thing that like people are going to break the law no matter what because they don't care about the law. But anyways, back to the topic at hand. I think though that speed limiters is an absolute joke. I truly do. And then it's like, why should a smaller provider out there be forced? Like, when is enough, right? Because I feel like, all right, ELDs was first, speed limiters second. Then what? What's next?
Automation. I mean, Chris, like this is the natural progression.
Exactly right. Automation, electrification, complete gut of the small business and the American dream. Is really ultimately the big picture with it.
I look at this as the continuation of deregulation in 1980. If you go to the way back machine, 1980, 60 to 70% of truck drivers were unionized. That was just the nature of the business. They deregulated, it fragmented. You had mega fleets arrive and they used all these safety measures. To your point about like the safer roads, ELDs, I think, have not shown that it's a safer road, but we have seen hours of service violations go down as a result. So there is some compliancy aspect. But to your real point about what happens for the small business owner, look, if you are given a government mandated subscription service to an ELD, which is what the government did, they force you to buy something where 1 in 5 of those devices that have been put out in the market have been taken off the market because in our industry, these ELDs are self-certified. The manufacturer says, yeah, I can do all those things. And there's no testing by the feds. But once you get past this ELD mandate, you look at the speed regulators, the natural progression is now every fleet behaves the same way. They're all moving the same speed. Automation becomes far easier to get. Now, I will say this. There is a very good reason to go slower. If you're a truck driver and you want to save money on tires, save money on fuel, save money on maintenance, you go slower. But that's your decision. You can make that decision. It should not be a government coming in and saying, we think every road should go this fast. States have the rights to make speed limits. Let the states decide what the truck limit should be as opposed to the feds.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, man. I think that at what point is enough going to be enough, right? Because like it's just like with man, I view a lot of these things is it's like, I mean, it is literally killing the American dream. It is killing the small fleet, the owner operator, and it's removing them from the roads, right? Like, and it is only a matter of time because anybody could be like, oh, well, there's 90% of the trucks are small, yeah, for now, because they're able to afford to be able to operate. But, how many people that are small businesses are like, oh, $300 to do the speed limiter. I know that it's not just, it's gonna be probably $300 a year to do that. Like it's going to be another fee and then there's going to be a speed tax, and then there's going to be everything that comes along with it. Right. Like there's just so many after effects. I just ultimately feel like this, man, just leave us the fuck alone and let us operate our business. Right. Like there's already enough rules and regulations that are out there. And again, I'm not saying it needs to be the Wild West and that there shouldn't be any laws. I don't believe, I'm not that fucking libertarian with my mindset, but I'm pretty very much stop the overreach.
So the thing is, I agree with you generally, but I'll kind of bring out a couple things where I think we really need to consider what the long-term outlook is. And if you look at our industry right now, the insurance limitations we have, the minimum insurance for a motor carrier is $750,000. That's been set since 1980, never adjusted for inflation. That is the number today. If you want to get a truck and start rolling interstate, you have to pay insurance to get a minimum of $750,000. In addition, the national average for out of service trucks, when you inspect the equipment, is 21.6%. Again, 1 in 5 commercial vehicles on the road at any time are unsafe. So the question becomes, are we doing enough to inspect these things for safety? Or maybe we just make the safety things more lax. We have more companies that can meet the minimum threshold. But if we look at our industry and we say, this is good enough, I disagree. I think fundamentally our industry must get better at the maintenance of their vehicles and the safety of their vehicles and ultimately the insurance risk that they bring to the world. When you're out there driving an 80,000-pound machine with 2 months of training, there's a question. So I look at it and say, I would love to see our existing regulations enforced far more vigorously. And we probably have way too many motor carriers on the road that are operating underinsured and unsafe. And that should give everybody pause when you're on the highway with your family, because we all want to get home in the same condition that we left.
And I think that ultimately this boils down to, when the government is as large as it is, there's so many redundancies that come along with it, right? Because you got to ask yourself, ultimately, why hasn't the FMCSA or the DOT actually done anything about this? Why don't they do their jobs? Ultimately,
The industry doesn't want them to. I mean, if you get OIDA and ATA to agree that we shouldn't raise insurance limits, or if you get to a place where like, we don't want to have more than one inspection a year, this is the natural outcome. Like, we have the exact supply chain that we designed 20, 40 years ago. And if we look and go, it's a problem, that's because it was designed this way, not because it's accidental.
And then we take it a step further, and this is why we need to eliminate or limit lobbying to a certain amount.
We just need more robots, Chris. The robots will handle everything. They're so good. They're so safe all the time.
It's wild though, right? Like it really is, because it's like the rules and regulations that are out there. I would argue that there's probably so much that just gets overlooked, because it's like, let me ask you this actually, before I ramble here, and I know that we're kind of running short on time. What do you think is the core issue then? What is the catalyst or the stepping stone to the gateway drug of all the issues? Everybody likes to say weed's the gateway drug out there, but what's the gateway drug of transportation?
With the beginning, we talked about the non-competition. Here's what should happen. The FTC should simply make a rule that says any job description out there must include disclosure of a non-compete or a non-solicit or a non-disparage, whatever the things are. You should have to disclose them before you join the job. That's a simple thing. For our industry, for trucking, man, the simplest thing in my mind is FMCSA should mandate 2 inspections a year. We shouldn't just have 1 inspection, have 2, and then have far more ability to enforce the regulations. And I ultimately think you have to raise the insurance limits. That will reduce the carrier capacity. That'll make brokers more money. It'll cost shippers a little bit more. And that means it'll cost us as consumers of products more to buy things, which is not ideal. But this system that we have now is broken. It was broken by design. And either we have to come to grips with the fact that it is not a good system, or we have to make changes to make it safer, which is what we all should be passionate about.
We should just insert price controls. That'll fix everything. Sorry. Anyways, I'm done. We're done. Say it.
I'd say this. I had this conversation with my good buddy Ken Adamo over at DAT just a few weeks ago. I am not in favor of this, but I do think it's interesting. What happens when you're moving freight at a price below the operational cost to maintain the truck? It means you don't maintain the truck. And is that the thing that we want? Do we want to have people moving things at a number that is not enough to cover the maintenance of the vehicle? I don't know. Personally, as a lawyer, I've seen enough of these catastrophic accidents. I don't want to see any more of them. And I think that would be one really interesting place to start.
I was more talking about to curb corporate greed, price. Anyways, that's going to be it for today. We will be back tomorrow. I got guests coming on. I think 3 of the next 4 days. But yeah, you guys will be seeing other pretty faces besides mine out there. As always, if you guys got value in what you heard, subscribe to the show, you guys. Rank it out there, you guys. Honestly, that is what I'm being told really helps get this message spread out, is through ranking on iTunes and Spotify. So if you think I got 5-star worth of value and that's what I provide, drop that on there, you guys. Again, I just want to reach more people to help them. Ultimately, when it boils down to it, I want to put enough quality information out there, you guys, to keep people in business. I don't know everything, but a lot of the people that I do know, who I bring on, know a lot. And we're just trying to build an education platform for the transportation industry out there. But we'll be back. I appreciate you guys. I love you guys. And we'll be talking to you soon.